Just wanted to tell everyone thank you and welcome to our new podcast, Puppy Ponders. Okay, Puppy. So we want this podcast to be on a very educational, learning, wellness based. So we're really excited that James is our first person because we wanted to bring him to the studio anyway after finding him through a friend. So thank you so much, James, for being here today. And again, the recording of this will be saved on your on-demand platform. And if you need help accessing that, just shoot us an email after. At the end, we'll stick with some Q&A after the podcast, so we will put you on mute soon so that James could speak, and then we'll open it up for questions. And, again, we're really excited to have an Ayurvedic practitioner first, because Ayurveda is something that's been really a hot topic now in the studio, and I know a lot of you are interested in it, including myself, and learning more. So James is actually going to do a private consultation with me after to make sure that I'm doing everything I need to do to stay healthy, especially during this time. But if you have people that you would like us to interview that you think would be great for the studio to hear, please send us those names, because we're really happy to keep this going. Anything from you, Caitlin?
I think that was the basics, but thank you all again for joining us. We're really excited to start this new podcast, and thank you, James, for being our first guest. We're super excited to have you.
Pleasure. I'm honored. Thank you. First, wow, I didn't know. So, you want me to take over? Or?
Go ahead, James.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you again for inviting me to share with everybody. I have a long history of teaching in the yoga community, although I'm not an asana teacher specifically. So it's like a home for me. It's a second home for me to be around teachers and teacher trainees. I've taught in literally hundreds of teacher training programs, and I feel like it's like my home. It's my office. I feel really, I'm actually in my home and my home office right now, which is kind of interesting to say that. But usually I prefer being in a yoga studio on the floor, hanging out with all the yogis. So I'm really comfortable doing this with you guys, and really, really appreciate always meeting new people and new schools. And Jess, thank you for reaching out to me. It's always a delight to open up my inbox and find a new school that's wanting me to be a part of it. So anyway, thank you. So Jess asked me to give a talk about Ayurveda, and I'm going to assume that it's because of the health concerns that we all have right now around the COVID-19 virus and the infection that it's creating. So I thought it would be good, and she thought it would be a good idea to kind of chime in on what Ayurveda can offer to keep us healthy and safe, and to protect ourselves in a very concerning time. And we don't know exactly. Let me give you an interesting little piece of my background that might help. Before I got into yoga in 1987, or at that time actually, I was a student at UCLA studying infectious disease epidemiology. So I have a little background. I did a master's in infectious disease epidemiology, and it's always stayed with me. I don't work in the field, so to be honest, I'm not actively engaged in it like I was, but I understand it, and I understand the language. I understand what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve, which is pretty phenomenal and unprecedented and noble at the same time. I think all of us participating in this is actually quite noble and quite powerful as a collective, as a community, as a country, as a world, to be doing this and sacrificing for ourselves as well as for everybody else. And we've had viral diseases come through and pandemics in the past, and we never did anything like this. We let it roll through. It took a lot of lives, and I think the H1N1 virus in 2009, 2010 took about 40-something thousand lives, and just the flu in 2017 took 60,000 American lives. So if we can flatten that so that we're not getting anywhere near those kind of numbers, then it's worth all the sacrificing and the inconveniences of these times. So, because this is about our lives, it's about everyone else's lives. So, well, what can Ayurveda bring into this? Well, there are very obvious and kind of universal concepts that Ayurveda can share that would be really important for you to hear and practice. And then there are some specific practices that we can talk about that you can actually do that can increase your, decrease your chances of getting sick. So let's start with just general concepts of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is they call it the sister science of yoga, meaning it's one of the three Vedic triad disciplines that comes out of the original Vedic texts. And those three disciplines are yoga, Ayurveda, and Jyotish, which is the Vedic astrology systems. And so to understand one, it does help you and gives you a certain advantage to understand another. Mastering more than one or two is quite difficult. So, no one's expecting you to become an Ayurvedic practitioner to do this. There are two kind of general streams of wisdom that are taught in Ayurveda. One is more of a clinical and medical stream. And that's a training that I went through back in 2000, 2001, 2002. It was a 3-year education program with my teacher, Dr. Vijay Apte, and about 6 other Indian doctors that teach here in the United States. Around that time, I also went to India. Actually, it was the 3rd time I'd been there. I'd lived there for a year in the late 80s with my first wife, who's Shiva Ray. She's a well-known yoga teacher. And as you probably have heard of her, she basically created Vinyasa Flow. So when I said there's a lot of yoga in my life, there's a lot of yoga in my life. So that aside, so we lived in India for a year in the late 80s and went back in 2000 and stayed at an Ayurveda center in Kerala on our way to the Maldives to do some video shooting. And didn't really even know what an Ayurveda center was. I mean, I'd read some of Dr. Ladd's books on Ayurveda and so on. So, and they were wonderful. And I was an acupuncturist already and an herbologist. I practiced plant medicines, but Ayurveda was kind of new. And staying at this Ayurveda center really opened my eyes to what Ayurveda can do. And one of the things I wanted to share with you is this notion or principle within Ayurveda. There's a Sanskrit word for it. There's a Sanskrit word for everything in Ayurveda. It's pronounced Swabhavo Paramavada. Swabhavo Paramavada. And this term translates as, or means that our body has a built-in intelligence and a set of instructions, a wisdom, if you don't mind, that is constantly moving us in the direction of balance. So what that means is that our body is always healing itself. We have the ability to heal anything. All that Ayurveda does, or all that any of these recommendations that you learn from Ayurveda, or that I would share with you if you ever study with me, are really just methods to help you remove any limits to that healing energy that you already have. So to eat healthier, to live a healthier lifestyle, to get more sleep at night, to take certain plant medicines if you're into that, to do a cleanse once a year. All of these practices are very powerful, self-empowering kind of self-care systems that come from Ayurveda, but actually what they're doing is they're just helping you to heal you. The Ayurvedic practitioner can take a little bit of credit for having performed some of these techniques and for having taught you how to do them at home. But in a way, we're not really doing the healing, you're doing the healing. And that's what Ayurveda teaches at its sort of core. The other stream that came, besides the clinical and medical side, it's a system called Swastavrita. And Swastavrita is the self-care systems. It's the way we as individuals use Ayurveda to heal ourselves, to take care of ourselves, knowing a little bit about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, the 3 doshas, knowing a little bit about how your digestive system works, how the fire element is used to transform and cook foods, how we need to absorb those things using the power of Vata and flows in the body. Just a little bit. You don't have to be an Ayurvedic doctor to do this. In fact, most of this sort of self-care use of Ayurveda in India is done by people who learned it from their mother or their grandmother in the homes. You know, just someone telling you, this food's a little too hot for you. This food's a little too cold for you. You've got a cold right now. You don't want to eat that. You need something warm and light. Those little messages that you get from mom and from grandma in India, they kind of go a long way, and they add up to a lifetime of kind of common sense and insights. And we don't get a lot of that in our culture. Unfortunately, we get other forms of insights and other forms of wisdom, of course. But there's also a lot of trending, and a lot of ways people will use health trends to take care of themselves. And then 6 months later or 2 years later, we're not doing that trend anymore. We're on to something else. So what we instead really hope to inspire people to do with Ayurveda is to not focus so much on trends. You know, learn what you can from them, but better to know who you are, understand your nature, know what we call your prakriti. Prakriti is the term for your constitution. It means nature, actually. And so when you know your nature, you will know how to feed yourself. You'll know how much sleep you need. You'll know how much to put into your yoga today, whether to back down a little bit, push a little stronger, and so on. What kinds of pranayamas and meditations. It's an important part of customizing, really, all these options that are out there and knowing which ones are best for you, and also how to employ them, like really what you need to stay well. So in response to the coronavirus pandemic, I think what we're going to find, if I'm a little bit honest with you, is that people who are more actively engaged in self-care are going to do well. And people who are a little less engaged in self-care are going to possibly be the ones that get hurt or lose their lives. So what I would say to you right now is, whatever little you can, read about Ayurveda, read a book, determine your constitution. If you don't know that, as Jess said, I do private consultations. I'm happy to do them. But my consultations are educational as well as diagnostic. So my purpose of them is to empower you to use that information for yourself. And that's the most important thing that you can do. So knowing yourself and knowing how to care for yourself, that's the big one. So then to get specific to the coronavirus itself, like the actual virus, what we know is that it infects primarily the lungs. And in Ayurveda, the lungs are what we call the seat of kapha dosha. Kapha dosha is the physiological force of liquidity, fluids, and also generating tissue. So, and it's found all over the body, but it's found primarily what they call its seat, or one of the first places it gets aggravated, if it does, is often in the lungs, sometimes in the stomach. So the last thing we want right now is for an aggravation of kapha to be happening in our lungs. That will set us up to be more vulnerable to any kind of infection, whether it's bacterial or viral, right? Whether it's a common cold or corona. So what we're recommending from the Ayurveda side of things is that you take foods that will reduce kapha, whether you have a kapha issue or not, or whether you're a kapha dominant constitution or not. We want our kapha dosha forces to be minimized. We want to pacify it, or we'll bring it down. How do we do that? Well, we know that the foods that are warming, that are light, that are drying, will reduce water element and earth element in the body. And those are the two elements of the 5 elements that create kapha. So let me give you an exact opposite of what that would look like. Foods that aggravate kapha would have a high amount of earth and water element in them. I'll give you an example. Fettuccine Alfredo, okay, lots of bread, lots of dairy products and cheese products. These sort of heavy, creamy, unctuous, maybe fried, maybe just really slimy, kind of heavy water and earth element type foods, which, look, I know we love them. They're good sometimes. They're very nice. And I want you to enjoy them in life most of the time, or as much as you can. But right now, you want to stay away from those. And so you want to focus on foods that are more on the drier side. Avoid dairy products, or at least cow dairy. Sweeter things. The sweet taste also aggravates kapha. So unfortunately, you'll want to avoid lots of those sweet things that you enjoy, particularly the dessert types and ice creams and, cookies, cakes, all those things that can also cause you to gain weight. In fact, if you think a food will cause you to gain weight, that's a kapha aggravating food. So right now, you might want to stay away from those foods. When this all blows over, have a nice time. I understand that life is short and you should enjoy yourself. And I'm not the kind of practitioner that's like really super rigid and strict with my patients. I know that I have to be realistic with them, but there are times when you have to be strict, and this is one of them. So let me go back over that again. Anything too heavy, anything too dairy-based, sugar-based, flour, wheat, excess grains, all those sort of like high carbohydrate type foods, sweet foods, are kapha aggravating. That will create more mucus and more phlegm and more restriction and congestion in the lungs. And those are the people who are going to be more prone to a weaker immunity in their lungs, and they're going to get sick more often. And they could be at greater risk for this virus. What can we do to dry the lungs a little bit, to make them more toned, a little bit more warmer, a little bit more resilient? Well, warmer foods, drier foods, leaner foods, fresh vegetables, more of a vegetarian diet. If you are into animal products, you would do more like lean, chickens and turkeys, white meats, things that are kind of like light, they're not heavy, greasy, and fatty. As far as herbs go, there are some great herbs out there that are used for toning the lungs and strengthening the resistance of the lungs and your immune system. Tulsi is one of them, Tulsi, also known as holy basil, is a really important herb. We are sipping on it kind of throughout the day here in this house. We also have fresh basil. If you go to a Whole Foods or one of these markets, they usually have fresh little pots of fresh basil that you can buy in the produce section. Grab a couple of them, take them home, and then every time you make a tea, just take a leaf off and break it up into tiny little pieces, or cut it, put it into the cup, and add boiling water on top of that with the tea bag of Tulsi or holy basil, and you've got a nice warming, drying kind of immune tonic. If you want to add things like echinacea, golden seal, those won't hurt. I don't know how effective they are at treating viruses, but they can prime your immune system and keep it a little bit more hypervigilant, let's just say. Just how are we doing on time? And I wasn't quite sure how long I was supposed to go for.
We have the whole thing down as an hour, so you have some time.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay. Let me see. I had some notes here. 1 second. Okay. Other things we can do. Okay, let's get more specific, more practical here. Apparently, vitamin D. At least there's some recognition that vitamin D might be effective. So I would up your vitamin D intake. Also, vitamin C and zinc, according to some reports out of South Korea, seem to be effective. Common things, people take them for flu season anyway, so you might have them around. It can't hurt just to keep that on your list of things to take. We're doing oil of oregano, these kind of common kind of antiviral kind of herbal products you can get. Like Gaia is a really good company that makes good herbal products. You can get them through Whole Foods or any kind of good health food store. What else? A really, really big one that's going around right now is the use of oils nasally. And I know that sounds kind of strange if you're not familiar with some of these Ayurvedic practices, but it's a very common Ayurvedic daily routine called nasya, Nasya, nasya. And nasya treatments are usually just any kind of treatment or therapy that's administered through the nose, because the word nasya means nose. And there are many different types of nasya treatments. But we've been recognizing in Ayurveda for a long time that the application of oils to the nose has the effect of limiting seasonal allergies and common colds. So is that true for coronavirus? We don't know, but we're going to do it anyway because we think it helps with other types of viruses and allergies. So why not give it a try? How does it work? Nasya is a practice where we apply oils to the nose, and I'll tell you how we do it in just a minute. And the idea or the theory being, in the clinical practice being, that the oils will coat the inside of the nose. Not just the outer nose, but actually all the way in towards the back, towards the throat. Because you're going to apply the oils and then you're going to sniff. So the oils are going to go back pretty far. You can still breathe fine. Don't worry, it doesn't affect your breathing. But that oil kind of creates a barrier on the inside of the nose. It creates a nice sort of oil layer. So things like pollens, that if you know anyone who suffers from seasonal allergies, those pollen, the pollen will not make contact with the mucous membranes and the histamine cells that are on there. It sticks to the oil instead. In fact, the oil kind of slowly kind of migrates out of the nose. So they tend to come out of the nose. There are very small little hairs in the nose called villi. They actually move, and they kind of move dust and dirt, mucus, boogers, whatever you want to call it. They're constantly kind of moving towards the front. They're not being moved back. So if you put oil in the nose, there's an oil barrier, a physical barrier to the mucous membranes. And there's also this movement of the oils out of the nose. So viruses that are coming in through the air, this is how coronavirus is being transmitted, are being trapped by the oil or stuck in the oil and then being removed from the body rather than finding their way all the way into the back of the throat or into the lungs. We don't know if it's going to capture all of the viruses. It may not. But if it can capture a good amount of it, it might be enough to make a difference. So people are oiling their noses in the Ayurveda world like 2 to 3 times a day. All right, so how do we do it? Traditionally, in clinical practices, a person would be laying on a table and then we would apply oil to the nose because they're facing up. You have the option of either laying on the floor, on a couch, or on the bed, and kind of with your face looking up, administering the oils to your nose so they can kind of move down into the back of the nose and into the throat. Or you can just stand up. It's really fine. One product that we use that's very popular out there is from a company called Banyan Botanicals. And Banyan has one Nasya oil product. It's called Nasya oil. It's very simple. It's a nutritive kind of oil-based Nasya product. Not all Nasya products are oily, and not all of them are kind of gentle like this one. So what you'll do, it's an eyedropper type bottle. This is not it, but it has kind of a glass tube in it, just like tinctures do. And so what we do is we kind of squeeze the bowl until just the bottom little fluted part of the glass is filled with the oil. It's about 3 to 5 eyedroppers. Okay, and then we take that and we can tilt the head back. Try not to touch the nose. You don't want to contaminate it, but you can do the best you can. And just sort of squeeze it in, sniff, get 3 to 5 more drops again, sort it into the opening of the nose, squeeze, and then sniff. Put your bottle down and give it a nice massage like this. The whole face, the nose, and then sniff a couple times. And if you can actually taste a little bit of the oil in the back of the throat, that's a good thing. That means you actually got the oil further back into the nasal passages. You don't want to use more than 3 to 5 drops because you'll waste the oil. You end up swallowing more than you need to. But 3 to 5 is enough to do that. And just do that a couple times a day, 2 or 3 times a day. Yeah, so those are sort of big things. Other herbs that people are taking, let me grab something here. Or other kind of practices in Ayurveda that are being recommended right now is, well, not that you have a lot of choice in this, but eating a lot of fresh cooked foods from home. You know, trying not to eat out. And I know that's a little hard for some of you. You've got restaurants doing takeout right now. You know, prepared foods from grocery stores, Whole Foods, and so on. Those are going to be very high risk kind of contamination experiences in your life. Now, we don't think that this virus is transmitted through foods. That is not what I'm suggesting, but cooking from home is going to be a safer experience for you. It's also going to keep your body stronger. And also use more spices in your cooking, particularly turmeric, ginger, black pepper, basil, like I said, cinnamon, and garlic. These are all kind of warming, pungent spices that are going to have a strengthening effect on your digestive fire and a reducing effect on how much kapha dosha gets generated when you cook. Also, drinking lots of hot water or teas with ginger and lemon in them. You can't get enough of that right now. Just to keep things warm and pungent and drying. Ginger and lemon are drying on the body, and that's exactly what we want. Keep moving, keep exercising, even though you're at home. Don't let that be an excuse to not do your practice. Keep sweating. Sweat if you can, as much as you can from home. Do a nice online practice with Blue Ridge, and keep the body active and warm. That will also reduce kapha. What else? Yeah, keep the throat clean. If you have any reason to gargle. Keep phlegm out of the throat from accumulating in the throat. Cleanses in general, a fast might be a good idea, or some maybe a mild intermittent fast could be a good idea. Just that also reduces kapha. There are some kind of esoteric practices. I don't know if you would be willing to do these. There is a practice that comes from the yoga side of things that people are using right now. It's not for everybody, but let me just put it out there. I'm going to give you at least 20 things to do. So if one of them doesn't work for you, you've still got a lot of options here. But this is a practice where they ingest salt water and then they emit it. They kind of purge it out. This has the effect of reducing kapha in the stomach, but also in the lungs. So like I said, not everybody can do it. It's kind of a mind over matter type of thing. But basically what yogis would be doing in this type of an environment in India is they will be making saline, like you would make a neti pot. You just put salt, kosher salt, iodine-free salt into fresh water, bring it up to the salinity that's the same as the ocean. Do the best you can, or like tears. And then you would drink about 5 or 6 cups of that salt water. And which is not fun. The first time I did it was not my favorite. And then go to a toilet sink outside. I like to go outside. You put your finger down your throat and just purge it up, and you'll get a lot of excess kapha come out. Okay, all right, go ahead. Sorry, 4-year-olds. Okay, 1 second. Hold on. Okay, well, we go. Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't aware it was going to be an hour. Yeah, so anyway, let's see how this goes. Okay, so that's another option for those of you who are a little bit more hardcore and you want to do something that's new and hasn't been done. That kind of practice is called a kunjal, Kunjal, a kunjal kriya, Kriya. It's also very kapha pacifying, very cleansing to the lungs, because you not only purge the stomach, but your lungs will also emetic. The villi in the lungs will start to bring everything out. So it's very cleansing. You'll know what I mean when you do this. Yeah, those are kind of the big things that we're doing. Teas with lots of, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, do you want to go to Q&A?
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Yeah.
I'm gonna unmute everybody. And you can ask James any questions that you have.
How do you spell that Banyan product if you want to?
Yeah, sure. The Banyan product is called Nasya oil, and it's spelled Nasya oil.
Okay, is Banyan Banyan?
Oh, sorry, Banyan. Yes, like the banyan tree, Banyan tree, Banyan Botanicals. And they have a great website, a really nice website. I should mention here, I am an ambassador for Banyan, but I told them I don't want any money from them. I refer people to them, and I don't want any conflict of interest. So I don't make any money from referring things to them.
I have a question. I have 2 kids myself. I was just curious if you had any suggestions for younger kids in the 3 to 5-year-old range. Is there anything that I could be doing for them to help strengthen their immune system?
Yeah. The first thing I would do, so Ayurveda recognizes that. Uh-oh, got a dog barking. Okay, or turn your mic off if you're not talking. So Ayurveda recognizes that humans have 3 developmental stages. From birth until adolescence, we're in what's called the kapha stage, because kapha is required to generate tissue. It's building the body. From adolescence to menopause, you're in the pitta stage, because it's about fire, transformation, conversion. Converting ideas into work, into money, into homes, into cars, into the whole karmic exchange of the midlife stage of life. And then from menopause, and in men we call it andropause on, we're in a vata stage of life. So children, to come back to that, children are in the kapha stage of life. So they're going to be particularly more prone to kapha aggravations than adults are. They're a lot more, Jess?
Yes.
Is she there?
Yes.
Okay, I need about 1 minute. Okay?
Okay.
Hold on. Be right back, guys. Hold on.
What? Oh, Jessica got muted.
Oh,
Somehow.
other chats.
Jessica, do you know where you would get this Tulsi?
I know it's for sale in like Whole Foods and Earth Fair when it was open, but I think we could order it on Amazon because I don't have any more, so I will put it in order as well.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Three Rivers Market probably carries it as well.
Okay, where is that?
Downtown near Baxter and Central Avenue,
Okay,
and they carry lots of those kinds of things. And they also have herbs and essential oils and things too.
okay, thank
Is
you.
that a tincture that you're talking about?
The Tulsi,
Yes, is it a tincture or is it like a dried herb?
it's a tea. You can actually, in the tea section, there are different medicinal teas, at least at Three Rivers Market there are. And Tulsi is spelled Tulsi.
Okay, I was just curious. I actually have holy basil growing in my yard, so I was thinking maybe I could just dry it and make a tea out of it myself.
You probably can. You probably could do that. And you may not even have to dry it. You might want to look that up. Yeah, I would look that up though on, in a resource though, but I seem to remember, we're a member of a community farm that had holy basil. And I seem to remember her saying you didn't even have to dry it, but I would probably double check that.
Okay, thanks.
Hey Jess, can you give me some examples of what would be like specific foods that are like dry and light, like he was saying?
Yeah, well, here he is.
I'm so sorry. My wife is working online. She's a clinical psychologist at Harvard, and she's on an online meeting. And then my 2-year-old just had a meltdown. So it was like a toss-up as of whose online experience was more important here. I think I lost, unfortunately. I lost that bet. Okay, so he's good. We're all good. I apologize. You guys were talking about holy basil. Was there a question about that?
Someone was asking where to buy it. I was saying that I have some in my garden, and I was wondering if I could just make a tea with the fresh leaves.
Is it holy basil or Western basil?
Holy basil.
Oh, wow, good for you. Yes, you can just take the leaves and chop it up and simmer it
Okay,
for 5 minutes.
great.
Yeah, no, if you have it in your garden, that's fantastic. But basil will work also. It doesn't need to be Tulsi or holy
Okay.
basil. They're very, very similar. They have the same medicinal properties.
Okay.
Tulsi is more sacred in India. I will have to say that because it's considered by the Vaishnavite Hindus, the ones who are devoted to Krishna, and Ram, and Hanuman, the whole sect of not the Shiva devoted, but more the Vishnu lineages. They believe that Tulsi is the goddess.
Wow.
So they would never use it as a medicine, but the Hatha yogis are more from the Shiva tradition, so they do.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
Laura, I think you had a question.
I guess I actually have 2 questions. Can you give like some specific examples of foods that would be light and dry right now? Because I'm struggling to just even meal plan in my head.
Yeah, sure. Well, in Ayurveda, there are 2 ways of doing it. There's the actual food choices, and then there's how you prepare them. Either of them, or both of them in this case, what you would want to be kapha pacifying, we call that. And for kapha, I mean, you can go online and find food lists. Just type in Ayurvedic food guidelines for the doshas, and you'll find these. But for kapha, examples would be most of your green leafy vegetables, your warmer spices, anything that has a pungent or warming energy to it, or that's bitter, or that's astringent. And you want to avoid or at least limit the amount of foods that are sweet and sour and salty, because those sweet, sour, and salty will aggravate kapha. They increase kapha, which right now we're moving into the kapha season anyway. If any of you that live in 4-season places, and I think Tennessee is, the kapha dosha is increasing anyway. So the timing is kind of perfect. So if you want to transition your diet into more of a kapha reducing diet, you're doing yourself a doshic favor based on the seasons anyway. It would be the seasonal kind of meal plan transition Ayurvedically now anyway. So that's one of the reasons why this virus is going to be as risky and dangerous as it is because it's impacting the lungs, which is in the kapha region. In fact, all the viruses impact the kapha region, and they always land in the kapha season, which is, early winter to spring. So the kapha, in this kapha season, when everybody is eating, fun whatever foods, salt and animal foods and fats and sugars and all these things which people do all year round, they don't realize that at this time of year it has even more kapha aggravating effects than it would, say, in the summer. When the fire element is stronger, you can get away with having some nice fun sweets and stuff, and you don't really see a lot of excess mucus or weight gain or kapha. So right now, you'll want to eat more of those, and you want to eat those foods or prepare them through dry cooking, meaning baking. If you're into grilling, and I like grilling vegetables, grill. Any kind of dry heat is going to be a kapha reducing way to cook those foods. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One more quick question. You had just said that children are in the kapha stage of life.
Yes.
I'm wondering why then, help me understand how we've heard that children are stronger at not getting COVID, that we're not, we're seeing more of it not in kids. I guess I'm not getting that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So every virus has a different target kind of population. Their DNA, the RNA that's in those viruses are different, and they attack different types of cells, and they also have or encounter the resistance of the immune system of everybody that it infects. So some viruses affect more the elderly and children, and some affect more people in midlife. This one seems to affect people over 45, 50 more. And but H1N1, it actually killed more people under 50 than it did over 50. So they're all a little bit different. But children, anybody who has a weakness or a vulnerability in their lungs, hold on, they're going to be more at risk of infection, because this is a lung disease, basically. So we need to keep our lungs as strong and vital, tone, warm, dry, than we would normally in March, April, which is more of the kapha season. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Oh, but children, but I wanted to mention one thing about children, sorry, is that children also are fed more kapha aggravating foods than adults are. No offense to parents out there. I'm a parent, and I'm always watching this, but I see a lot of kids with ear infections and nasal discharge and chronic colds. They're always kind of oozing and juicy and kind of flowing. That means that their kapha is aggravated. That's kapha that's been pushed to an unhealthy degree. And it's okay if it's just a cold. It's actually not a great place for a child to be in all the time. And they're going to be prone to putting tubes in their ears, draining their ears and all these things frequently. And the way to limit that is to just give your kids less sugar, less milk, less dairy, a little less Dannon yogurt with the fruit sugars and the white sugar added to it, and like the things that kids really love, but they're just overwhelming the kid's body with excess sugars, and so that aggravates the kapha and causes that's why they get sick more frequently. They get lots of bugs from daycare centers and so on, because their lungs are so kapha aggravated.
I had a question about if is there a way to make your own nasya oil at home?
Oh yes, definitely. And I should have said that. Nasya oils can be anything. It can be sesame oil. It can be olive oil. It can be almond oil. It can be coconut oil. It doesn't have to be, I love Banyan, but it doesn't need to be a $20 bottle that you have shipped from Banyan. It can be right out of your culinary oil in your kitchen. So if you want to get really specific, like Ayurvedically correct about which oil to use, that helps. They like safflower oil and mustard oil for kapha conditions. But, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to create a barrier to that virus. So it can be any oil, it can be whatever you have. Just make sure it's more of a white sesame and not a black sesame, or roasted sesame like used in stir fries, because you will smell that oil pretty strongly in your nose. All the other oils, once you put it in, you don't smell it. Within a few seconds, you don't smell it at all or taste it. So I would say use whatever you have.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hiatal hernia, and Could I put like ginger and turmeric, that type of thing, in a capsule?
Hmm?
Okay.
Yep, you can. Yeah, so that it doesn't irritate your condition.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, you can buy them in capsules. Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions for James?
I have a lot of questions, but can I ask just one more? I know you had mentioned your digestive fire earlier, and I myself have always had a sluggish digestion, and I know a lot of your immune system lies in your gut. So do you have any recommendations for increasing digestive fire?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's look at nutrition. This is a good question that is actually relevant to this whole conversation that we're having, because if the digestive energies are strong, you're much more likely to have more energy in life in general, and you are more likely to have a stronger immune system. You're going to feel more vital, healthier. All of your tissues are going to be healthier through the whole body. So if the digestive energies are weak, we call that sorry, just make sure the little one's here. Yeah, if your digestive fire is weak, then you're at more risk of having more toxicity in the system, what we call AMA. So what that means is that we're absorbing some of the unwanted aspects of our foods and losing and waste more of the healthier components of food. So every food that we eat, whether an apple, a vegetable, or eggs, it doesn't matter. Those foods, all of them have a pure aspect that we absorb or we want to absorb, and an impure aspect that we don't. They're called the Sara and the Kit, the pure and the impure. And if your digestive fire, we call it your Jatra Agni, we also call it, or your digestive forces are strong, you're going to absorb more of what's good and eliminate more of what's impure. If it's weak, we call that Manda Agni. And what we do is we recommend that you eat lighter, don't eat heavy foods, don't eat cold foods, avoid iced beverages and ice in drinks and water. Make sure everything is warm that's going into the body. And also eat lighter. I think the kapha pacifying foods are actually going to help that a lot because they're lighter in general. But there's a class of herbs, they're called Deepanas, D-E-E-P-A-N-A, Deepana. And Deepanas are herbs that strengthen the digestive fire, the digestive energies. Some of them you'll never have heard of before, and that's totally part of herbology, but there's a lot of them that are very common spices that we use in cooking. And they include ginger and black pepper. But there are other ones like fennel seeds, cumin, coriander, not coriander leaf, that's cilantro, but more coriander seeds. And of course, the warmer, more pungent spices like a little bit of cayenne, things like that. But we don't like using a lot of those. But if you need strengthening of your digestion, it's totally fine to do that. So making ginger teas is a really easy way. Adding ginger to your cooking, and black pepper. Don't overlook the power of black pepper. It's everywhere. We think it's, kind of old school. It doesn't matter. Black pepper comes from South India originally. It comes from Kerala. It comes from the Spice Coast. Now it's everywhere. So we think it's sort of like, one of mom and dad's grandparents' kind of foods. It's a very powerful spice. Use it. It's very pungent. It's very warming. Right now, because we're moving into the kapha season, and also we have this disease out there that's defined as a kapha disease, putting black pepper onto everything, it tastes great, and it's strengthening your digestive energies, and it's also drying to your system. So use more of it. Get back into black pepper. crack the good stuff, or just sprinkle it on. But if it's really weak, to be specific, you'll want to probably be drinking like ginger teas throughout the day. Okay.
Thank you so much, James. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. I know I took a lot of notes, so so definitely really informative for right now. So I'm going to send everybody that is participating an email with how to get in touch with you for consultations and anything else you would like to share with the group before we close it, James.
Embrace Ayurveda. I hope you'll spend some time learning about it. It's a journey towards self-knowledge. It's not just a cool thing to know or read a book from. When you really apply Ayurveda, it's really about knowing you, and knowing ourselves is the only way to stay healthy on this path. Is self-knowledge. So, and it's a powerful paradigm. Use it, and let me know if you need any help with it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and your vast amount of knowledge. So we really appreciate you. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And yeah, we'll be in touch with you soon. So
okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.